Hey there and good afternoon. Gosh, welcome. We are presenting Resume Renovation today. Let me just adjust my screen. Let's get these things up here. There we go. Welcome. You know, our resume is a very, very important selling tool. And we often, we tend to think of it sometimes as this glory document. Oh my gosh, I love my resume. Take a look. We're going to frame it, put it up on the wall type thing. By the way, I'd love your resume to be something beautiful. But your resume's job is singular. Your resume's job is to deliver the interview. So I want you to critically think about what your resume is doing for you. If it is delivering the interview for you, those interviews that you think you're qualified for or right for, probably don't really need to change it very much. It seems to be delivering the interviews. If it is not delivering the interviews that you are right for, there's really something wrong with the way you're telling the story, and you have to probably focus and shape that story. Still absolutely letter true, but you have to control the story, and we'll teach you how to do that today. I don't want to set an expectation that you're going to spend 2 hours and have your brand new resume. What you will do is spend 2 hours and have your first iteration of your new resume. Probably very likely need 4, 5, 6 iterations to get to the right version. We're going to go through all that today, so let's go ahead and get started. I am in an extra special good mood today because I did get my first shot this morning at 10 minutes before 5 o'clock in the morning because that's when the appointment was available. And I'm very excited to get it because I'd like to get back out there amongst people just like everybody else. So today, let me get a sip. Resume renovation. You know, when I was naming this lecture, I was thinking about the challenge. Obviously, I have lots of competitors out there as well that talk and teach about all the job search subjects. I certainly do as well. So I thought, well, how does mine separate from those? How is it different from those? And I thought about the real challenge, and that's the difference in every one of the lectures that I look at and present is let's take a look at the behind the scenes challenge and how whatever we're working on, not today we're going to work on resume, but how does what we do to the resume help solve the challenge? So I settled it on this name, Renovation, because I really thought that it represented exactly what has to be taken. This is not put a little fresh coat of paint, put up some new blinds, maybe change one of the pieces of furniture or something like that. This is let's go in, break down the walls right down to the studs and rethink everything from really ground up. Think about that and what we're going to do. Now, renovation also hits from another standpoint. If you've ever been lucky enough to do a physical renovation on where you live, a few years back, I was able to do my kitchen and my bath at the same time. And I am not of the means that I can go live someplace else while that's all happening. And, what does that really turn into? That turns into about 4 months of nightmare, coughing and hacking and all those things as I'm trying to escape the construction inside of my apartment. But of course, before it all starts, the first thing I would do is run out to Home Depot or someplace like that, get some plastic, get some tape, and race around all the other places in my apartment, covering up and sealing off and trying to protect those things that are valuable to me. But there's nothing really valuable in my apartment. I really wish there were. But there are things in my apartment that are very similar to the things that are on your resume, things that I'm emotionally connected to. My father passed a few years ago at 91, but I've got his first confirmation picture, from I guess it was the 1930s, in a hand carved frame out on my counter. Has no actual value, but has a lot of emotional value. Oh, you have the same thing in your storytelling on your resume, things that you become attached to, that you love and cherish, but really have no business being on the resume. You have to get ready to maybe take those out of the resume, go put them up on the shelf. You can go visit them anytime that you'd like. But a renovation is right down to the studs. We have to rethink everything. If we're going to solve our resume's problems, the reason why your resume is not working, not delivering, not elevating your brand the way it should. That's another test, by the way. If it is delivering the interviews and you have to work far too hard within your interview discussion to position and sell your value, then the resume is not really doing it for you. Your LinkedIn may not be doing it for you as well. In solving these issues for your resume, yes, we have to look at the story. Absolutely, that's part of it. We have to look at the format. Some people think it's as simple as typesetting. Oh, I need to get some better typesetting. Absolutely. Some really good typesetting will help, but you have to also think about the story. And for both of these, both the format and the storytelling, we have to really go through an earth-shattering paradigm. How do we change things? What else could we do? So there we go. I think the mic is back. So hopefully that will broadcast. Sorry, a little bit of interruption there. So the whole point here is we have to show how we're going to be effective. We also have to show that we can engage remotely. That's all part of the world we live in. Make sure that your resume, even if you've not worked a remote job before this pandemic, and maybe you've not been working during the pandemic, so you don't have a remote job, but I bet you've done things that illustrate your ability to deliver value at a distance. Maybe some of the things that are up here on screen. Maybe you've managed team members or vendors or clients or partners that are off-site, interacted with those folks remotely. Yeah, you may have to go back and tell your story in a slightly different way. Maybe you've been a great communicator in your work life. Maybe you've done conference calls and those kinds of things, webinars. Maybe you presented at conferences. It's all a demonstration of potentially delivering value off-site. Again, it's how you shift the story, a slight shift in the story, but really to you, it's going to seem like a total upending of storytelling, a paradigm shift. I have to really go after it a very, very new way. Now, if you haven't seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. Let me tell you a little bit about my background, and you should understand anybody's background that is teaching you. That's the only way you can really understand how to parse and value the information, which pieces align with me, which should I apply to my path forward, and which should I maybe let fall by the wayside. So 7 or 8 years in outside recruitment, that's a traditional headhunter on a desk, having to go into the competitor company, lure out those people, and shepherd them through the whole process to get hired. It's very, very similar to being a glorified dating guru. Yeah, millionaire matchmaker. Maybe I should have gone that route. That would have been quite an interesting, but very, very similar skill, by the way. It's almost identical. Of course, besides those three different disciplines on a desk as a recruiter, I was the national trainer. So 3.5 years out of the entire time in recruiting, we had a 100 office recruiting system. As each individual office would hire potential recruiters, they'd come into my 90-day program to teach them how hiring really works, which is really not how people think it works. If it worked that way, you wouldn't likely need these lectures. Of course, ended up being VP over all 100 offices before stepping out and doing what you see now. And for the last 10 years, I give lectures for the New York Public Library, which I have one coming up on Tuesday. That's the interview intervention plus video interview techniques. By the way, that will not show up on my Facebook and my YouTube channel, just all of a sudden like these lectures. That's one that you have to go sign up for at the library and log in. And I will certainly be posting that link before this next Tuesday. That's a Tuesday. I believe it's a 5 p.m. lecture, but I have to look at the time. All my times are on my website, selfrecruiter.com, right on the homepage. So think about where your advice is coming from, which if you should accept that advice. Of course, the rest of the time, besides speaking to different audiences, besides the library, it's New York State Department of Labor, several locations, Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, Harvard Business School Club of New York City, a lot of different places that are looking for this information, for the value, for understanding how they change the equation really into their direction, make their job search life a little bit easier, and their career management easier as well. Now, a few resources that will help you before we get right in. Over on my LinkedIn, you can click on my articles. This one will piggyback on today's lecture, how your resume does not become resume roadkill. I will reinforce a little bit of what you hear today. How to supercharge your job search. There's a whole separate lecture on that, but that's a good supportive article that'll help there as well. Also, how to avoid the biggest mistake in job search, and that's time mismanagement. Only resource you actually have as a job seeker, so we really have to think about that. Now, right on my homepage, selfrecruiter.com, about halfway down the page, you'll see exactly this. You'll see me. You'll see the slides. You can make me large or make the slides large. You can use it as a start and stop tutorial. Now, for the whole lecture series, it's really about one thing. How is it that you're going to become this one great recruiter that looks after one great candidate, which is also you. So it's really becoming the jack of all trades for yourself, and you're going to have to master everything yourself. That means I have to be the strategist. I have to be the cheerleader. I have to pick myself up by the bootstraps when necessary. Your job is to sell. So in becoming a self-recruiter, becoming this person that can represent themselves not only during this transition, but really in your career in a much better way, that involves networking in a new way. That's really LinkedIn. So be sure to watch the LinkedIn lecture. Also requires keeping one eye on the toughest competitor imaginable. That's that 4, 5, 6 people that if you knew they were applying for the job, you'd be like, oh, they're applying? Oh, forget it. That person. We can beat those people so easily if you don't stick your head in the sand. If you stick your head in the sand, they'll beat you virtually every time because they're sparkly, they're shiny, they're perfect. Have you met one, by the way? I'm not sure I really have. And I strive for perfection, but I'm certainly not perfect either. I don't think these perfect people exist. Oh, they seem perfect, but you know what they suffer from? Ego and arrogance. They wake up in the morning, they dust themselves off, they go, well, who are they going to hire? They're going to hire me. And then they don't actually prepare. A little bit of strategy, planning, a little bit of forethought. Oh my gosh, you can outmaneuver them very, very quickly. Don't let those folks take your opportunity. You know, we'd all like to kind of see the job and go after the job, get that job. Really doesn't work that way. It's really not that easy. Everyone's sitting home doing the same thing you're doing, which is hitting that darn button, which almost never says apply. Almost always says submit. Submit, all capital letters, until we're so submissive. It's like a Friday night waiting for that phone to ring. It's a rut we get stuck in. We have to get past this. Leaves us in a very unhappy place. So if there is something to look back at, fix, adjust, absolutely. And then quit looking in the rearview mirror. Get over what has ever been holding you back or what you think has been holding you back. And let's get on to our next opportunity. You have to believe in yourself more than the next 5 or 6 people believe in themselves if they're going to hire you. You know, the secret to getting hired, and really does help to think a little more unusually, unconventionally, unexpectedly, but the secret to getting hired, if you're capable or qualified, is understanding how they make their decisions and being persuasive around those 2 elements. The ways you get hired, there's only 2 of them. Let's get over on camera here. There's only 2 of them. And, you know, this is assuming you're capable or qualified. Let's be clear. I would never hire anyone that wasn't capable or qualified. But that's not why I hire you. I wouldn't hire anybody that didn't bring that to the table. That's a bare minimum foundation. The reason I hire you, the reason I select you, is because I like you. It's chemistry number 1 above all other things if you're capable and qualified. And confidence number 2, that's confidence in you or confidence in what you might deliver to me as the hiring person. Those are the deciding factors if I believe you're capable and qualified. So we have to be persuasive. We have to sell that element of who we are. That's our job. You know, interviewing and outreach it's all sales, which you'll hear in some of the other lectures that I give. And when people hear that, they usually go, oh. Sometimes I would ask audiences when I was in front of them in person, anybody like salespeople? I said, not very many. Well, you know what? We actually do like good salespeople, because good salespeople, you don't see them selling to you. Bad salespeople are the ones that you remember when you think about sales. You have to become the master at selling yourself. Now, why does a resume still matter? I mean, aren't we in this digital world and everything else? It's how you take control of the discussion. It's usually the first opportunity to take control of the discussion. Even today, you know, if it's a decent job that we're going after, probably 1,000, 2,000 resumes going in. Don't mishear that. That's not 1,000 to 2,000 qualified individuals. Let's go over those numbers, because you really need to understand these numbers. That will help you focus the right amount of energy in reinventing your brand. Think about the challenge behind the curtain. So behind the curtain, that's 1,000 to 2,000 resumes. You heard me say it. That's 90 to 95% of those are not right for this job, but they saw this great job and they thought, oh my gosh, they have that job. They must have the job for me right around it. They send in the resume, clogs the entire system. So the first question you have to process is who can read, because nobody wants to read today. You know, even in an email message, the answer will be right there. It's only 1 paragraph long. The answer's right in the middle sentence, and people will miss that you provided the answer. So who can read? But it's not just the resumes. It's 1,000 emails, 1,000 cover letters, 1,000 resumes themselves. That's if there's only 1,000 resumes. And who can do all that in addition to all the rest of their work? But you're still not really getting the full scope of the challenge, because if you're working with a recruiter, and that's an internal or external, it doesn't really matter. If you're working with someone with a recruiter title, that type of individual tends to work on 10 open jobs at a time. Let me get a little bit of a drink. So they're working on 10 open spots at the same time, doing all of this juggling. So it's really a question of who can read 10,000 emails, 10,000 resumes, 10,000 cover letters. And I sure hope you realize nobody can do that. And you go, oh, the system. You mean that system that's very similar to stopping by the bodega to buy a lottery ticket? You're going to let the system determine your future? Oh, the system will spit my resume out and I'll just love it. They're going to spit your resume out to whom? To the HR individual? Now, if you've seen some of my other lectures, by the way, some great HR individuals out there, we really misunderstand what their role is. We somehow think they're the ones that do all the hiring. Well, they may seem to, but you know who they actually hire? The only ones they actually hire are HR folks. That's their folks. The rest, they simply facilitate the process. So really, to me, in my view, you're counting on some machine to spit your resume out to the wrong person whose job is, their mission in life really is to rule you out. I've got 1,000 to 2,000 resumes here. The only way I get through this is to pick up each one and go, what's wrong with this one? What's wrong with this one? Oh, this one looks pretty good. Put that at the good stat. What's wrong with this one? What's wrong with this one? You have to think in those terms. How do I get by that screening? Or maybe I just do something very, very different and go right to the decision maker. Yesterday's lecture, 5 o'clock, it's right available on my YouTube channel, Self-Recruiter YouTube channel. Going right to the decision maker. That person is not afraid of you. That person understands you as an asset. That person is the one that's struggling and needs your value. All you have to do when you approach them is remember it's a date. So it's not about you, even though it is. It's not about you. It's about them. It's about this company. It's about your excitement and the value you could bring to them to make their life easier. Just a slight shift in how you see the world. But you've got seconds for them looking at your resume to make this determination. Why is this one not right? Why is this one not right? The trap really is we tend to go, oh, I have to be perfect. I have to be cookie cutter perfect. I'll just be so perfect. Let me look at I'll be so perfect. They just see me as interchangeable. Okay. That's one approach. Now, if you'd like to be that interchangeable candidate, I'm going to pay you less. If I hire you, I'm paying you less. You don't want less? No, I'll take the next to you. I'll take the one over down. Somebody in this line is taking less. You have to not only be the capable, qualified, interchangeable who gets less money, you have to somehow also at the same time be exceptional, different, the person that steps out of line. I really mean that both figuratively and literally. Why not get out of that line and go right to the decision maker, which changes the entire equation. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 iterations, not just one resume. I have to go through round after round after round to get to the right resume. Don't stop your work early. Make sure to work all the way through to the end to get to the very best version of your resume that lifts your brand and solves your challenges and problems. And oh yes, there's a way to solve all those things. Small changes change perception. Your job is to shift the perception. Now, what's your story? Right? That word is a little problematic because when we hear story, we sometimes tend to think of things that aren't exactly true. We are certainly not talking about that, but we're going to have to go back and really rediscover our story. Now, some people might go, what do you mean? I lived it. I don't need to rediscover it. You certainly did live it. In fact, you lived it so well. You were so close to it. You now can't emotionally see the story because it's right on top of you. What you need is a more like 1,000-foot, 2,000-foot, 5,000-foot view of everything. You're going to have to go back and rediscover your story. You've tossed away, dismissed, lost so many valuable points in your background because you thought, oh my gosh, that was so long ago. Oh, that was nothing. That was insignificant. Oh man, gosh, that one was actually a turd. Get it off my resume. Things that you thought were hurtful to you sometimes are the biggest asset. We're going to take you through those things. I recommend you sit down and do a deep dive interview. This is exactly what I do with my clients. I'm not a secret that I help clients individually reinvent their resume, reinvent their LinkedIn profile, lift their brand so that opportunities that they deserve really are open to them. That's what you need to do here. But to do it, you're going to have to uncover the story. You're going to have to pretend, essentially, that you don't know your story. Go back and interrogate yourself. Spend about 90 minutes doing this deep dive interview. Out of that, you're probably going to come up with 8 or 9 pages of notes. This means you don't accept a single thing that you say. You cross-examine, grill, interrogate yourself until you discover all the things that you forgot or dismissed or let float by the wayside. Capture all of that. Now, 8 or 9 pages of notes is not going to fit on a resume, so what I'd recommend then is pick up a highlighter and be very stingy. I'm very stingy with my highlighter, and you only let yourself highlight the nuggets of gold, the drops of perfume, the ruby, the diamond, the emerald, just those things in the notes. And now as you look across those pages, remember everything on these pages is emotionally connected to you. So you can't highlight it all, just be very stingy. Now whatever's highlighted has to make the resume. The rest of the content has to be filtered through a lens, through a question to help you understand what's valuable. So at a minimum, I have to be capable and qualified, but I also have to understand storytelling. And it's the why am I interesting, which could have to do with my work life or could have to do with my non-work life. And we're going to get there. What makes me tick, again, which could do with the work life or could do with the non-work life. But those, if I think you're qualified, those are the real drivers for me. And really all decision makers, even though they may not voice it that way. So when we look at all of these notes about ourselves, it's about beginning to think in terms of brand and branding and how do I put things together that will lift how people perceive me. I don't have to read what's up here. You can see it. Anything that could separate you from the others in your same field. So take all of that leftover non-highlighted information, filter it through this one singular question. If you've seen my lectures before, you've certainly heard this question many times. Why is it going to be the very best business decision that I make today if I choose to hire you? Oh my gosh, if you can convince me of that from one look at the resume, first off, you're getting that interview. And if the interview goes the way I expect or the way you've set it up for me to expect, you're going to get that offer. Now, after giving one of these lectures at the New York Public Library, somebody came up to me and hit me with this brick in the head. They come up right after the lecture and go, okay, I've been told all I can expect is more of this. I'm like, what is it? And I'm like, now, if you've seen me before, you already understand my energy level. I'm very passionate about what I teach. Today, I'm having soda because I've already had enough coffee. I've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning to get my shot, which I'm so happy about. But my gosh, we have to think about all of these individual things here. We have to think about the energy. So as I'm faced with this question after giving my lecture and the adrenaline running free, suddenly I'm looking at this resume and I'm falling asleep. I'm like, if I fall asleep, that's not going to be very nice. I better ask a question. What do you want to do? I want to be in events. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's some good energy. Have you ever done events? Ouch. Let's bring this center stage. I'll go a little bit small here so you can get a closer look here. Let's bring this center stage, maybe even a little bit larger there. My gosh, I am me with my background. I guess it really doesn't make a size difference for this. I am me with my background, and I can't see it. It says right there, events coordinator. All I can see is law firm, law firm, law firm. Oh, more law firm for you. That's what's going to happen for you. Okay. Well, I get how they get there, but this wall of text isn't really helping anything. Even if I zoom in, it doesn't really help. I get a few words in. I go, now there are law firms and there are law firms. Oh my gosh, that's a law firm. Money. That means they put on really great events, by the way. But your story has to come to life. This is that same person's background, the same exact story, and yet their whole existence professionally jumps off the page. Actually jumps off the page without you having to read. I don't know if you detect it yet, but there is not a single sentence anywhere on this resume. There's never a sentence on a resume that I create unless I decide to put a quote somewhere. A magical quote, let's put that, and then it's a sentence. But the rest of it, you need to learn that we're in a world where no one will read. It's your job to remove the work for the reader so your story just goes into their brain. They just go, it just speaks to me. I can just see it all. Yes, masterful. Many rounds to get to this. We're going to break some resumes down and teach you how you get to this going forward. We'll also give you all the font sizes, all that kind of thing. But let's not forget the transformation you're going to have to go through, this dramatic change, and you have to be ready for it because we're a product. Which product do you want to be? You want to be that darn store brand? The label color is a little bit off. The taste, a little bit off. Oh, price is quite good. Price is quite good. But you want to be that? Or do you want to be the Kellogg's, the Folgers, the Coca-Cola, whatever it might be, the national brand, which also gets more money, is perceived differently as a product? Which product do you want to be? You have to think about all this to begin to create engagement, although it's a lot closer to this style of engagement. I'm going to come a little bit back bigger here. We don't really need to be small anymore. I'd like to join you a little bit closer. Small changes change perception. That should motivate you to let's control the personal brand. How do I shift the value perception of me? Again, remember, brand is all those things that separate us out from others. So let me just share a few resumes that I pulled right off the internet. So yes, do be careful where you put these. I happened to be over on Pinterest and someone was collecting resumes. I'm like, oh, I love resumes too. Let's see what you got. And so I grabbed a few of them because I thought they were quite interesting. Let me show you and really torpedo with some commentary a few resumes that we pulled off the internet. Some styles that you may have seen previously, tell you what's wrong with them. Then I'll teach you how to change all of that. So I'm going to go small so this gets a little bigger. Oh, there we go. And so Kelly here, first off, kudos to Kelly on his or her brand. Big, bold, I cannot miss it. Now, I'm not quite sure that shades of yellow was the right choice. And when that prints out, it's shades of gray. That doesn't really help a lot. And that's the last positive thing I have to say about this resume. What this resume suffers from is the thing that most resumes suffer from, including some of the ones I'll show you next, and that's failure to consider information architecture. I mean, should I start at the main column and read down? Should I do this and read across? And how should I absorb this information? And you know what? I have 3 to 5 seconds to absorb that information. This really doesn't work. Julia! Another interesting thing here. Well, we have a few things to tell you here. Now, I didn't write the commentary down on the bottom here, but it says, who said the name had to be at the top? Anyway. Okay. If you need me to, I'll say it. Subtitle of my book is Changing the Rules. I'm a big believer in changing any rule that you'd like that doesn't work for you. This is not a rule that you can change. You have to meet their expectations, which is the name at the top. By putting the name in the middle, suddenly I've created an information architecture problem. Am I supposed to read below the name first, absorb that, then go to the top? And really, if I look closely here, first off, I cannot see your employers. And I know you might go, oh, they look a little bit, fogged out, John. Can't quite see those. Yes, that's true. Let's imagine they're not fogged out. I still can't see them because I have to go intellectually find them buried in the middle of the text. You need to serve that stuff up on a silver platter because that's what they're after. In fact, the only thing served up on a silver platter that I can actually digest is the reason I will not hire this person. Dates. Now, dates are expected, by the way, but dates are a reason I do not hire you. Dates are never a reason I hire you. And so even though they're expected, why would you put them near where their eyes go? Think about a normal resume. Name at the top, employer title, employer title, employer title, education. It's a reverse half moon. Here, all I see is the dates, the reasons I won't hire you. We have to think about avoiding some of those things. Martin here, kudos to Martin on his brand. And yes, we pulled off the contact information, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, gosh, I get it. I've seen this kind of resume over the years many, many times. I'm not sure it's worth 25% of the entire real estate to tell me your contact information. I'm not sure that's a good investment in your storytelling. Also, information architecture problem again. I don't know if I'm supposed to run down this blue column and then over, or how's that supposed to work? And if I really back up, all I can actually read is education, internship, and personal skills, which have absolutely nothing to do with Martin's value. Those are silly labels pulling the attention. Your story has to pull the attention. We're this product. We have seconds. You have to capture their interest in the way you put your personal branding together. Yes, at a minimum, be capable and qualified, but the story is really, why are you interesting? What makes you tick, in addition to what they see being knocked out of the ballpark for whatever your past employers are. So to clarify a little bit, because we have two marketing documents that we have to consider, this is the resume lecture, but your LinkedIn profile has to come up. These are two related marketing documents. So your resume, in my view, is about catching or piquing the interest, tends to be the first point of contact, not always, but tends to be. LinkedIn, that's, in my view, where you really close the deal in their mind as the very best potential candidate that they're looking at. So you want to think of it that way. But again, this is really simply about influencing them to your value. Let's go back to that brick in the head that I was given and think about how we're going to shift this whole story. So your job is to see all of this minutia that makes really life impossible to see, and think about, how do I add some clarity to the influence piece? That, by the way, is clarity of your career path and your story, and influence over the value level that you've built as a product. They have to want your product, desire your product more than the next 5 or 6 people. So let's go back to the renovated version of this, and you suddenly see that quite literally there's every single reason that I would jump out of my chair if I'm hiring some events. See everything that they've done. Have you ever done events? Oh yes, absolutely. I've done events at the Heller Gallery, at Guggenheim, at the Met, Lincoln Center, Morgan Library Museum, the New York Public Library. I'm like, why didn't you tell that story? You'd be hired tomorrow. Well, I mean, I just didn't do that. I was also I did the catering, the RSVP, the venue selection, and speaker wrangler. I'm like, speaker wrangler? Well, who are the speakers? Ted Koppel, James Carville, Mary Matlin, Tom Brokaw, Charlie Rose. Well, yes, some of those names have to be updated and changed over time. But getting your story to have some clarity, getting your story to jump off the page begins to build the romance, the desire for your background. Let's jump fully in. We're going to teach you how to renovate your resume. We're going to come back to each one of these really quickly. You are a product too. We're going to talk about that. Your resume, the new definition, your resume's goals, understanding stacks of resumes and what happens when you push that darn button, and the 3-second resume test. Let's go back to the beginning here. You are a product too. When a company chooses to hire you, they are buying a product, and that product is you. Yeah, might as well come a little larger now. That product is you. So we may not like that concept, but I think we get that now. And they're buying our time and talent, so we have to get them to fall in love with our product. Resume, the new definition. Now, you need a lot of ink to write this down, so we'll go slow as you write. Are you ready? Are you ready? It's a simple sales sheet that creates desire. That's a masterful resume. It's not a biography. It's not a summary. It's not a 6-page CV telling you everything that's ever happened since birth. It's a simple 1-sheet sales sheet. Think about if you were walking down the street and it was not a pandemic world, and we might like to go inside and shop and all those kinds of things. I'm walking by a Best Buy and suddenly I'm magnetically drawn to the window. There must be something in there, some gizmo, something, you know how we are. And they do make some things in there, some really big things, some 71-inch, 81-inch, 115-inch televisions. And right next to every one of those big ticket items sits an individual pad of glossy single sheet glue on the one end. So when I zip it off, it feels very satisfying. Zip. And it's a sexy selling single sheet. So I can go home. Because, if you're not single, that's not an individual decision if you like your life. So that sales sheet is everything I need to go home and go, oh my gosh, our life would be totally different. I would do all my Saturday chores right away without being asked. I'd cut the lawn. I'd do whatever is necessary. I'd wash the car every week without being asked. If we had this, life would change. It's everything I need to do to sell. Remember, you're sending your resume to people that are not good at turning around and selling you to their counterparts. But that's what they have to do. Oh, I love this person. And they're not very good at sales. So you have to give them a sales aid, a resume that is a sales sheet so they can walk it down the hall and effectively sell you without you being there. Simple sales sheet that creates desire. Now, your resume's goals. Now, it has a mission and it has goals. Its mission in life is to deliver the interview. It has to have some goals if it's going to get there. And that's a clear, clean, straightforward format. This is a format where the information itself is put together in such a way, whatever I think would be of most interest, not what I want to tell, but most interest to the decision maker has to be put together in such a way can be easily absorbed. Oh my gosh, look at that word, absorbed. They don't want to read. You look at the new resumes that I'm presenting, oh, you can absorb it just by glancing. Flows right into the brain. It's right there. Of course, we have to clearly inform by educational background. That's part of it as well. Understanding stacks of resumes. Let's back up and just, if you haven't seen my lectures before, let me just get it out on the table. I am not a fan of applying online. Now, I know some folks are going to apply online, but if you're my client and I find out you're applying online, I am not a happy camper. That's because it doesn't typically work. Yeah, sometimes I got hired by applying online. Well, how many jobs did you apply for? 500? Wouldn't you like to change that? So if you don't listen to me and don't approach the decision maker directly, and I know some are just going to click and send, what happens if you hit that darn submit button? Well, your resume is going to go off toward a gigantic black hole in space called the data warehouse. If it reaches the data warehouse, guess that resume goodbye. It's probably not coming out of that database very easily. But on the way, it's going to go right in front of a person. Here we go. It's going to show up right in front of the person. All those resumes stack up, and they're going to make a quick decision about you. Oh, might be somebody here. That's a good stack. Stack number one. Oh, maybe. Have to come back and take another look. But they don't come back and take another look. They don't come back and take another look because I have this whole incoming river of new resumes. Why would I go back to these ones that couldn't quite convey their value to me in the first place? Of course, stack 3 is a thanks but no thanks stack. I hope you understand what you have to do here. There's a couple things to think about here. First off, the secret that you may not like is the amount of time in this valuation process about you. It is literally 3 to 5 seconds. You will never get longer than 5 seconds before you're in one of those 3 stacks. How are you going to control that? Your first job, your first goal is to get yourself into stack 1, or your resume is never really going to be read. Your cover letter is never really going to be read. Your email is never really going to be read. You have to get into the game before that stuff gets looked at, because I can't look at 1,000, 2,000 of each of those documents and times 10 jobs, and you know how that escalates out of control. There's another thing you have to think about. If you're lucky enough to make the good stack, starting with 1,000, 2,000 resumes, there's 50 resumes in the good stack. So go back to the original problem. Who can read 50 resumes, 50 cover letters, 50 emails, and do all of their own work? And maybe I'm working on 10 jobs at the same time. Nobody can read that either. So in my view, you're not likely to get your materials actually read until you make the cut right down to the 8, 10, 12 people that they want to seriously consider. So if you make the good stack with the resume, that's where your LinkedIn profile comes in play. Oh, I'm a big believer in distill our story down to the essence and value of our career on a single sheet of paper. But then now, how do you take that single sheet of paper telling, bring it over to LinkedIn, expand it into a 3-dimensional sales brochure, all about you, naturally driving that reader. So they're going to go take your name. They're going to go over and drop it in LinkedIn. You're not there. Out comes a resume over to stack 2. Wait a minute, no, you're on LinkedIn, but it's a placeholder. There's like a name, couple titles. There's nothing here. Out comes the resume over to stack 2. Nobody likes the third example. Wait a minute, you're on LinkedIn? It's exactly what I have in my hand. Out comes that resume over to stack 2. In my view, people really set up their information in reverse, incorrectly. They put far more information on the resume and very little information on LinkedIn profile, and it really needs to be the opposite. I have to have the short, wonderful telling with just the right value points on the resume to spark their interest. And where is the rest of the interesting, delicious story when I go look at the LinkedIn side? So I fall in love with your skill set. Let's get ourselves into stack 1, but know that you have to also elevate your LinkedIn profile so it works for you. In terms of resume, it's a 1-page resume, unless it's 2, but I sure hope you see how unhappy I am if I find out you're doing a 2-page resume. Let's just be clear. There's no time I'll tell a client it's okay to have a 2-page resume. Over the years, I've had a client or two that wanted one. Absolutely, I understand that. But it's not the right choice. And usually what it comes from is lack of confidence in their story. The resume and the LinkedIn sets you up for the conversation. You still have to have the conversation. That's where you win or lose right there. Make sure to maybe tune in on Tuesday for my interview intervention plus the video interview techniques. Really important in this world. So hopefully get it down to a single page. But what are we looking at? We're looking at your name, which is your brand, your current or last 3 employers and titles, and your educational background. And here's where I do a listening test. Are you listening? Are you listening? When I give this in-person lecture, I'll hear people saying in the room later, I'll go, oh, John said just put the last 3 employers in title. He did? When did I say that? I never said that. I said what we're looking at for time relevance of your skills. The jobs that are older, I can't count on the skills being up to speed. If you ask me a different question, what would you like on a resume, John? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I'd like a resume to be complete from the time you enter the workforce to today. Again, it's a listening test. Some people listening are probably in a panic. Oh my gosh, I go back to 1972. I did not say that was the right solution for you. I said that's what I like. You have to control your brand, control the story, and also control whatever reasons they may object to you and overcome those, even in the formatting, everything else. Now, as you work on the resume, you're going to do the 3-second test after each iteration, after each version. So you spend a couple hours, do whatever you're doing, improve the resume. You put it next to the original. What works? What's better? Where do I see opportunity? Now pick it up and do the 3-second test. Here's how it works. So in a moment, I'll tell you to pick up your resume. Don't look at it yet. Don't look at it yet. You're going to have to look at it as if you don't know this person. I know it's you. Look with fresh eyes. In the time that I tell you, when I tell you to start, you're going to look at the resume. And when I tell you to stop, you just answer for yourself rhetorically, what do I know about this person that is me and their value? Go ahead and take a look. And stop. And for those that weren't looking at the resume, they saw me count 1001 to 1005. It's never going longer than that, and you're in one of those stacks. Now, when I do this in person, people will look up and they'll be like deer in the headlights. They're like, oh, I can't tell you anything about this person, and it's me. That's a real problem with the resume. Every single time you work on the resume, you're going to go through this whole sequence to brainstorm, to look for other opportunity. How do I shift? How does the paradigm still have to shift to tell my story in a better way? Let me also mention that I grew up Catholic, so it means I really understand negotiating sin. There is no sin of omission here. There's only sin of commission. So I can leave out any part of my story that I'd like to leave out as long as every single piece that is there is absolutely electric true. Of course, you already see it up on screen. I object to objectives all of the time. Well, first off, objective really is objective statement that would seem to require a sentence. I'm not going to put a sentence on this resume. And plus, the objective is about what you'd like to be someday. Who cares what you'd like to be someday? I'm looking to hire a superstar. So to me, whether it's the objective statement or core competencies or a collection of everything I've ever done since childhood, all that stuff begins to congregate and populate at the top of the resume. And honestly, we shield our eyes. We open your resume, we look at your name, shield our eyes. Don't look there, don't look there. Employer title, employer title, employer title, education, decision. Why don't we take all that collection, pull it away? We may use it elsewhere on the resume, down at the bottom maybe. And why don't we simply replace it with something I call a positioning title? Simplest world, it's 4, 5, or 6 words that position your value and your role. In a more complex background, it could be 2 or 3 lines of 4, 5, 6 words with all different emphasis. And we're going to show you a bunch of them right now so you get a little bit of this. So here's a traditional big giant block of brick hitting me in the head. How far into it do I get? High energy event before I've lost it all, right? All I can actually read is profile and professional experience. And those are silly labels. Even if I zoom in, again, how far do I get before I'm like droning out looking for something more interesting? This is the same exact person. High energy events planner, specialist. Oh my gosh, now I get their value instantly from something so simple. This is a different individual, different background. They've got campaign director, media and public relations, community liaison. Right away, I instantly think of them this way because I see their name, I cross the positioning title, and it's so darn simple, they can't not absorb it, even if they don't read it. They can't not absorb it. And then they're thinking of you as exactly right for what their direction is as they look at how you contributed to the brands as they get on the page. A little more complex background. I'll have a whole story I'll share with you about this one. Accomplished sales professional, experience and extensive contacts across industries, software, hardware, services. Just what I'm looking for. I'm going to tell you that whole story coming up. So again, let's go back to the one most of us are facing, the giant brick in the head, and think about your job is to add the clarity, to go through the transformation process. Look, the story actually, parts of the story are actually still here. You see it. It's right there, buried in a format where I can't absorb the story. It's not going to work. There's inconsistencies in the formatting and everything else. Your job is to somehow still elevate your employers. I'd say the law firm looks more impressive this way than on the other resume. Of course, on the other resume, they're the only thing I can actually see. But your story comes to life here. All the reasons why I would hire you are right there, tangible, accessible to me. So think about what it took to go from this to suddenly get to something that suddenly just disappears into clarity. Or, of course, if that doesn't work for us, we can go back and do something that doesn't work so well and go back to that hard text that doesn't deliver the interview. We have to get comfortable with a new way of telling our story. Even if your field is so used to the CV type format and everything else, yes, this format can be very shocking to you. You know what should be more shocking to you than the format? Not getting the interview that you're supposed to get. This new format will get you the interview. I've seen it work time and time again as a recruiter. So yeah, we're going to have to think about how you accomplish something as masterful as you're seeing back and forth on this. But there's more to this person's story. They were so concerned over becoming mature. If we're lucky enough, we're all going to become mature. If we're not so lucky, well, I think we know what that means. I'd like to become mature eventually, but I'd like to stay, energetic and everything else. So this person was worrying about being mature, and they got the scissors out, cut, and they cut Martha Stewart Living off the resume. That's why it's like big law firm, oh, more law firm for you. Because they don't even see Martha Stewart Living. They don't even see the events. Or you also worked at House Beautiful magazine where you did an event at the Guggenheim, or European Travel and Life magazine where you did event-related things. Oh, sure, we may want to cut part of the story off, but let's not cut the wrong part of the story off just because we're concerned because it says 1993. You still have to, well, maybe not in a pandemic world, but you generally still have to walk through the door, or they're going to have to see you on video conference. There's only so much we can do there. Promised you a little bit of story here. This is really interesting. Guy calls me up from the Carolinas, says, I need some help. 10, 11 years ago, I moved into contract furniture sales, like selling 1,000 desks. Had a great run. I'm so done selling furniture. Every time I send my resume up, we don't need a furniture salesperson. Quit talking about furniture. What are you talking about furniture for? So what does it say at the top? This person is after a hardware, software, services. I said, well, what do you want to do? Hardware, software, services. I'm like, oh, that's a great area I used to do. I'm like, they make a lot of money. I'm like, have you ever been in it? I have 15 years ago. Bet you there's some people here that have the same challenge. Your challenge may be that you'd like to sell experience from 15 years ago and snag that job, that direction again. That's what this person's job was. Their original resume that they'd sent me, the 10, 11 years, the whole thing talked about the 10, 11 years. Where's the other story? I can't even see it. And they were like, furniture. Take a look at this one. Price Modern as a brand. I did not know them. You may know them. Corporate office furnishings. There's the three magical words that only appear one time ever. Hayworth. Yes, I do know them as a brand. Other than those three references, not a single thing here says furniture. Achieved $50 million cumulative sales to date, ranked top 10 revenues every year since 2002, built a strong pipeline. This is every single thing that would make that hiring manager jump out of their chair, get them in here. How does that positioning title at the top work? They pick it up, they look at your name, they cross this, sales professional, software, hardware, services, just what I'm looking for. And they look at this amazing contribution down the page. And since we were able to shorten up the last 10, 11 years, that allowed us to then expand the earlier telling. So they could see the software, hardware, services were right there. Of course, this person's working within software, hardware, services. Again, look at this, and it's every single reason why this person's going to get the interview. It's directly, subliminally connected to what is at the top of the resume. They're already believing you're the right one. Now, this is the bottom of another resume. There's a whole resume above this. But I want to teach you a few things here at the bottom. You may be mature enough that you want to cut some of your story. I totally get it. Totally get it. When you need to cut some of your story, you have to decide, well, when do I begin my story, or how far back does it go, depending on which way you want to look at that. So with this client, we decided, well, you know what? Let's start or begin your story with electronic data systems. I don't know if you know EDS. If you don't, they are one of those companies. Every single industry has one of those companies that, oh my God, they hired you? They hired you? You must walk on water. You must be amazing. Something quite unusual about you. Financial industry, do we know who that is? Do we know? Goldman Sachs. It doesn't matter what we think of them. It's Goldman Sachs. Every industry has these. So EDS is one of those. That's a great place to start the story. But look at and by the way, that starts in 1999. But look at the prior employment where we've dropped the dates. That's a very sly way to control perception in the brain. The brain knows that those obviously came before 1999. This resume begins in 1999. In the brain, it begins at 1999, no matter how much you intellectually process the other parts earlier. That's the advantage to this style. Also notice we dropped the months. Months aren't really necessary in the modern world, so get rid of that stuff. Look at the prior employment. PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, Kaiser Permanente, they rise to that same stunning level. You've got 3 crown jewels all within eye shot of each other. Those 3 additional employers add 17 years of extra background. Who needs to be 17 years older when you walk into your next interview? Well, maybe a few of us, but not very many of us. And yet you can't not share this. Look at the crown jewels here. My gosh, times 3. Wow, exciting. Those 3 employers, by the way, take up about 3/4 of 1 inch on the sheet of paper. I'm going to give the sizing coming up, but if that EDS, electronic data systems, is 10-point bold, which I suspect it is, because that's the format I follow, that means these 3 prior employers are probably 8-point bold themselves. Maybe the titles are 7.5. Maybe the location is down to even 6. Tiny, tiny, tiny. Spread out 3/4 of an inch on a single sheet of paper. It does not have to be big, equal. Big and equal does not get your information absorbed correctly. You have to think about a dark room with a flashlight, and you're going to look anywhere where that flashlight goes. Your formatting work is controlling the flashlight, controlling which 10, 15, 20% do I want them to read if they're only going to read that much. Another thing to learn at the bottom of the page here, big believer, by the way, of splitting the bottom of the page on a single page resume. Only way you really get to an effective use of the space to really tell the story that's necessary. Let me get a drink. So what you need to absorb here is we have 3 universities here, but only 2 of them are treated the same. Sorry for this word coming up here, but 2 of these are degrees and 1 is not a degree. And you know what? The certificate not a degree does not trump the 2 degrees. So everything has to be in its correct order. Now, if this happens to be your field, oh, I know you're jumping out of your chair over that PMP. PMP, oh my gosh, PMP, fantastic. I understand the PMP is the cell piece. By the way, it does not belong above the degrees, does not belong necessarily with the degrees unless you shift the story that way. Certainly does not belong, put it at the top of the resume, does not belong at the top of the resume. This is the sprinkle on top of that $15 dessert, or the drizzle on top of that, or the cherry on top of that. I trust they won't miss it. In fact, it's going to wow them. So if you became so enamored with one of your acronyms and you need it to get it to the top of the page, you could cheat the format a little bit by simply going John Crant, comma, PMP or CPA or whatever other acronym might be the one for you. So think about that. That would be very, very important. Also, you saw community involvement there. What makes you tick? Plus, you also need to get that character checkbox. Oh, yes, good character too, by contributing back to community. Remember, good works do not expire. It doesn't matter if you were doing something for Habitat for Humanity in 2004. Phenomenal. Everybody's going to ask you about that. Leave off the date. Good works don't expire. When they bring it up, they go, John, I see Habitat for Humanity. Oh my gosh. You know, that was in 2004. I went down to so-and-so and I tell the story. Good works don't expire. Doesn't matter. Again, so talked a lot so far about the story shift, but now let's really go into the formatting. I'm going to give you sizing here. The sizing is something that's not written down anywhere. We're going to bring this a little bit larger so you can see it without strain. The sizing is not written down anywhere. So let's think about this. everything on the page. We're going to highlight everything on the page. And first off, you have to pick a font. As far as font recommendations, I recommend Arial, Verdana, or Helvetica. This is Arial you're looking at. These are clear, clean, straightforward fonts. This is not the ones with the little squigglies, the little turns. This is not Times or Garamond or any of those. And I know your resume may be in one of those right now. That's terrible, terrible. Print your resume in those. Print your resume in Arial. Put them side by side. Which one can you digest more quickly? It will not be the other ones. It'll be the Arial, Verdana, or Helvetica. So I make everything on the page one of those fonts, in this case Arial. I make it all 10 point. Are we sitting down? Are we sitting down? And then every single thing on this sheet goes below 10 point. Of course, the subtitle of my book is Changing the Rules. I'm using my book actually as a little bit of a microphone stand here. So, gosh, oh my gosh, there it is. Oh, it's green, so it swaps out. How do you like that? So, my gosh, I'm going to violate my own rules right away by going up to the name and make it 18 point bold. Everything else, 10 point bold is the starting point. Now, when I look at the brands, that is Good Samaritan Village, that's Salvation Army, United Way. You know, in those, that's 10 point bold, but look at the comma, location, and date. Obviously, it's not bold, but it's also not 10 point. In this iteration, it is 7 point. By the way, you can have lots and lots of variety as long as you make a rule list. It is consistency that creates the resume that just breathes organically. I can just absorb it, yes, from all the work. Should also mention to you that before I ever went into recruiting, I have a full pre-press background. I ran a pre-press service bureau, which really means I do understand line and type and spacing and how that affects communications. So think of the labels. We're going to start there. Professional experience, education, another label. This iteration, there's 7 point bold. But even 7 point bold, all caps, it draws too much eye attention. Framework should not draw attention. Therefore, I hit it with a little bit of gray so it disappears into the background and your story comes to the front. After the label, be it education or professional experience, I like 8 points of space. I'm going to show you how to make that space coming up. 8 points of space after the label. Now, after the brand, that's Good Samaritan Village, Salvation Army, or United Way, or whatever else is on your resume, I like 2 points of space after the brand before the title. Now, you realize Good Samaritan Village has an extra line. We're going to come back to that special case. Salvation Army, okay. So the rest of these, the title, all the titles, that's community liaison or the public relations or campaign director, those are all, well, I really like a half a point less than the brand, which should tell you they're 9.5 in size. Mistake people make is they'll put them in bold, and then your title is fighting with the brand. I can't get either of them because they're fighting in the brain. They have to work in harmony with each other. Therefore, they both have to draw attention, but the brand determines almost every single ounce of your value, whether you like it or not. It's not the title. It's the title in conjunction with how they think of that brand. So after the title, before the bullet points, I like 4 points of space. We're still going to show you how to make all that space, but write that part down. Then my bullet point sets, I simply am going to take those bullet point sets, and each bullet point set I can do as a group. I'm going to make the bullet point sets 8.5 in size. And when I do, they're going to get a little tight, a little hard to read. And I'm going to fix it right now. They're already highlighted. And I'm going to add 1.75 points of space after every single bullet. They're magically just going to breathe and suddenly become readable, legible. Notice here also that we have our things they really want, which is employer title. They're served up on a silver platter. Everything else is indented. So what they really want, they can get to easily. With our formatting, we lure them into reading the rest of it. Close up, you see a little bit of the effect, a little bit of space added everywhere. Go back up to that extra line that's Good Samaritan Village, as you see here. Spent 13 years in Florida before I escaped. And really never going back except for an occasional visit, those kinds of things. Okay, what did I learn besides how to run away fast? I learned that every second or third mobile home or trailer park in Florida ends in the word village. By the way, there's nothing wrong with working for a mobile home or trailer park. but that's not where she works. In fact, she's had significant employer after significant employer. We can't have someone that doesn't know Good Samaritan Village suddenly go, wow, oh my gosh, how did your career go right into the toilet? Can't have them make that mistake. If your employer is unknown to the random person sitting next to you, they're unknown. You may need this descriptive line to set its value. The nation's largest not-for-profit long-term care organization, another significant employer, so they don't misjudge. By the way, if you need this extra line, it is 8 point in size, and absolutely there's 2 points of space right after it. All of this together will work. By the way, that could be a trap. That extra line, you may love it. Oh, I love it. Let's put it to all the employers. Absolutely not. If the employers are already known, you need to use that real estate to tell your story. So the whole thing gets absorbed really in a wonderful, easy way that just comes right off. Stick to your rule list. Now, the thing you didn't see there is the contact line. Contact line, a lot of people stack it up like a layer cake. I can come bigger here. We have lots of text here that's nice size. They stack it up like a layer cake, eating up all this real estate on a single page resume. It's a single line, 7 point. When you make it 7 point, it's going to go tiny. I can't see it. While it's highlighted, you're going to fix that. You're going to add space between the characters. All of that's coming up. So what's on that single line? We're going to start with our LinkedIn URL, city and state. I don't hire you because you live at 123 any street. We don't really need that on there any longer. Your email address, and the very last item is your cell phone number. No, you don't have to label it as your cell phone number. Just put the cell phone number. That is not your home number. I don't care that you can't get your cell phone at home. If the service doesn't get in my house, put the cell phone number down. Point here is if they're holding the resume and they're ready, and I convince them, call me. Easiest thing to get to in a Western world, left to right. Easiest thing is the cell phone number. Not quite convinced, not quite convinced. Click on my LinkedIn profile, my 3-dimensional sales brochure, and let me close the deal in your brain. That's your contact line. Now, how do we add space? You have to think about 2 types of space where we have to add space between lines and space between characters. And I have to extend a little apology on behalf of Microsoft. It's Microsoft Word, and there's like 20, 25 different versions out there. Yours may look very similar to this, or it could look like a completely different animal. Wonderful product planning. The main problem with Word, they've never bothered to fix. If you do all the attention to detail that I'm expressing that you need to do to really elevate your brand, and then you are ever foolish enough to send someone your resume in a Word format, you have no idea what it looks like. The preferences file that tells it what to look like stays as part of your computer. When it arrives at my computer, it opens by my preferences file, which could be very similar to yours or could be a completely different animal. A few years back, I was doing a reality TV pilot episode. Some folks were thinking of a makeover show, and part of the component was making over their career, and part was the other parts of their lives. And so some folks came to my lecture, and they're like, oh, we have this idea. Would you like to participate? I'm like, of course. Sounds great to me. Let's give it a try. And after my morning lecture in those years, I walked across Central Park and show up at this guy's apartment. They had been filming something earlier there. My part, they were going to go out and film in Queens, but I had to go meet them for that leg of the journey. And I brought his resume, the original resume. I have to save the new resume for camera. You cannot be surprised twice. It just doesn't work. I pulled out his original resume, and the guy went into a panic. Oh my gosh, what happened to my resume? I'm like, what do you mean? This is your resume, what the producer sent to me. Full 1.5 pages, by the way. His version, he runs off to the bedroom, gets his version, single sheet of paper. My version, full 1.5 sheets. Of course, the actual text was identical, but the font, the spacing, everything was completely different, and he was horrified. So we're going to tell you how to solve that. But yes, you're going to construct your resume in Word in almost every case. I just don't recommend sending it in Word no matter what they ask for. So to add space, go up under Format, down to Paragraph. This is the space after lines. When you go there, a box is going to pop up, and part of that box says Points After. You hit a 2, hit Enter. Or you put 1.75, Enter. 8, Enter. 4, Enter. Whatever the space is that I just gave you on all those different things that we talked about moments ago. You can always back up and watch the video if you need to. It goes right in there, and that space magically shows up. But then sometimes I either have to remove space between words or add space between words, depending on what I need to do. And to do that, you go up into format, down to font. And of course, dialog box is going to pop up and you're going to have to click the advanced tab where you can either expand or contract character spacing. Think about your contact line. So contact line, I'd be expanding it. Once it hits 7 points, tiny, I expand it by 1, 2, 3 points until it fills up the entire page. And even at 7 point with the space between, suddenly it becomes readable again. Really, really important. 3, 4, 5, 6 iterations to get to the right resume. Don't stop too early. Work pedigree. Gosh, that's a strange word. I think of horses, dog food. Well, I got the right word. You know, we may get a little bit of the 3 to 5 seconds of the resume, but I don't think you're really fully grasping it. We're looking at the quality of these companies, whether we're right or wrong. We're looking at the titles and accomplishments, even though I said we wouldn't read your accomplishments, and looking at your educational background. Now, here is the world's simplest resume. Todd Smith, Nestle USA, Director of Quality Assurance, Kraft Foods, Quality Assurance Manager, a Coca-Cola Company, Quality Assurance Engineer, Education, University of Florida, BS in Agriculture. If this is the resume, guarantee you it's the world's simplest resume. And yet you all have an opinion about Todd's value. I mean, what can we get even from this simple telling? Oh, has the degree, has a degree. That's usually a pretty good thing. No, I see career progression, engineer to manager to director. That's always just, oh my gosh, look at these brands. These are 3 stunning employers, aren't they? Aren't they? And when I do that live, someone will go, oh yeah, yeah. I'm like, really? How do you know? I did not work food and beverage, by the way, but I certainly have worked in many, many fields. I have a close friend who I've coached for quite a long time, who's worked for Liberty Media, Level 3 Communications, Genuity, which was GT Internetworking before that, Cisco Systems. Every single one of those brands I just mentioned is messed up beyond belief. Entire meat grinders spitting out their people in parts as they are an endless reorganization. You may have thought it was just you, because I'll ask my live audiences that are in person, I'll go, anybody work for a great brand? And I'll have 65 people in the room and 3 people will put their hand up. And the rest, I'll just look around and go, and you thought it was you. Oh, I picked some stinkers. Most of them are stinkers. Maybe these are stinkers. I don't really know. But you already understand the perception of the brand. Let's take it one step farther. You're now the boss that has to hire this person. By the way, we're not looking for the person we're actually hiring. We're trying to fill the last interview spot. 1 interview spot left. Todd or this other person? Todd or the other person? The other person, by the way, has the same University of Florida BS in Agriculture, the same engineering to manager to director, the same career trajectory. But of course, they did it for 3 food and beverage companies you've never heard of, and there's like 1 million of those. Who's getting that last interview spot? Todd or the other person? Todd or the other person? There's no question here. Todd gets the interview every single time. So value everywhere, but nowhere to be seen. You saw a resume with absolutely nothing on it besides the employer and title, and you saw value. Where you're going to lose your value is in what you then do under those. Your achievements have to be bullet pointed so they can just be quickly absorbed. They have to be indented to serve up the employer title on a platter. And of course, whatever's in those bullets has to deliver some tangibles and deliverables, has to help me visualize your career goals, your contributions, your achievements. And that means, yes, I'm going to have to, as much as possible, center the story on revenues or my handling of expenses or my effect on efficiency, somehow affecting performance, which is always the story. A little piece of your heart may be dying because you might go, but I don't have the dollar signs, percentages, and those kinds of things, John. Okay, not all of us do. You may have to go back and be more visual with your storytelling. What did you do? I was an office manager. Okay, well, when you joined, what was the situation? Oh, it was terrible. I had to reinvent the entire office workflow. What? Reinvent the entire office workflow. Oh my gosh. So visual in the way that you said it, I can imagine it. Probably have to gonna shift to more visual language if necessary. But you see the effect of dollar signs, percentages, everything else. Just know that you have to edit your story. Good story behind this resume you're looking at. This was one that I did years and years ago. The resume was originally 2-3 pages long. Every single bullet had an entire paragraph explaining how they did it. You know what that is? Demonstration that you have absolutely no confidence. People that are confident do not try to prove anything. They simply claim it. And if you test them, they prove it in conversation. So if you try to prove what is on your resume, that's not where you prove it. Prove it in discussion. The claim goes on the resume. So let's look at this decreased shortage by 25%. That's a very short bullet. Whole paragraph telling us how she did it. If you don't know what shortage is in retail, that's theft. That is product that does not pass by the cash register on the way out the door. So if you have decreased shortage by 25%, you are getting the interview. I have to find out why. But you don't tell them, not until they can't resist you, till you get in there, till you have that discussion. Degrees of degrees. Have you received in hand your college degree? I know that sounds so strange the way I ask. I learned to ask that way because you know what I just discovered in all my years as a recruiter? People were lying to me. Shocked. You know what really matters here? The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You know what 3 credits shy of your degree is? No degree. You know, you didn't pay that $168 you still owed. You know what that is? No degree. Get your credit. Had a client reinventing their background. They're well into their career. And I'm looking at their resume, getting ready for our first discussion. I'm looking at their resume and I'm like, oh yeah. Looks like they didn't quite finish the degree. And then I'm looking over at their LinkedIn profile. I'm like, oh, looks like they have the degree over here. We're going to have to do some clarification. So we sat down for our deep dive interview and I said, oh, well, let's start with education. And it was like, take another breath. I'm really not here to judge. I'm here to help you. Just tell me what the scenario was. It's like, oh, it was a number of years ago. It was a tough time in my life. And I was there on an all expense Army scholarship. I won the Navy scholarship too, but you have to pick one. I'm like, whoa. You're a dual scholarship winner? And it's nowhere because you have such a chip on your shoulder that you didn't finish the degree. You forgot how to tell the story. Now, I'm not a military person, so I'll get this part wrong, but they also achieved wing cadet commander of blah, blah, blah. I'm like, and that's nowhere to be found? It's like, because they were so hung up over didn't finish the degree. What you do if you didn't finish your degree is you put your course, your field, your college, university, whatever it might be, and you put coursework toward whatever the field of study is. But I'm sorry, a coursework toward and a BS and whatever is a little too close to baloney. There can be no 3-card Monty on your education, no hint of misrepresentation, not even a little bit. And so we put coursework towards field of study, dual scholarship winner, selected blah, 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 achieved wing cadet commander. Suddenly they see their new background. They're like, oh, I love it. Let's go tape it on the lamppost out on the sidewalk. I'm like, but you still don't have the degree. Changes everything. By the way, when they bring up that degree you may not have from decades ago, that's about resetting your financial expectations so that if I want to hire you, I get to pay you less. Don't fall in those traps. Learn how to overcome it. Oh, John, that doesn't look like you finished your degree. You know, I didn't, but you know what that allowed me to do was enter the workforce 2 or 3 years ahead of my competitors. And that's how I landed that initial opportunity, which then opened up this one over here and why I was able to build the stunning background, which brings us to today's conversation. Chemistry and confidence. They're trying to ding you. They want to see how you overcome that. Designing your resume. We're already here, so let's think about it. Designing your resume. This is about moving your brand forward. That's your name, by the way. And helping them visualize your whole career path, how you've delivered value. And of course, we have to inform about educational value. Let's have one more word about Word. Yes, I do the resumes in Word as well. And until we get to the final version, of course, my clients only get the PDF version. Once we get to the final version, they get the Word version, but they get it with a strong warning that I only recommend ever sending the PDF versions that freeze it in state. If you want to know how that works, video over on my YouTube channel called Headless Horseman, walk you through the whole process, convert your resume once you're done over to a PDF. It will look perfect, print perfect, no matter what machine is looking at it, no matter what software is looking at it, no matter what software or machine created it, perfect every single time. Wherever you are in your process of reinventing yourself and reinventing your career story, take that first step or the next step and understand you have to get the engine going. Thank you guys for joining in. I do want to point out, although I'm not going to cover it in today's lecture, that there's a really great cover letter article right over on my LinkedIn profile, also on my website under the advice tab. Just look for the article called Knock Knock, How to Write a Cover Letter That Will Open Doors. We'll take you through the entire structure and what needs to be accomplished in the cover letter to really elevate your brand, sing your praises, and deliver the interview. By the way, if you need help with your resume, elevating and seeing your brand in a new way, or with your LinkedIn profile, I think you know where to find me. All the packages are over on my website, selfrecruiter.com, right under the services tab. Take a look. And if you need to talk before really understanding what is the right package for you, send me a quick email and we will set up a time to talk. Thank you so much. Have a great day. I'm glad you guys joined in, and hopefully come back this next Tuesday for the New York Public Libraries that you do have to sign up for in advance. The New York Public Libraries interview intervention and video intervention techniques teach you all the ways to really work in today's world. See you on Tuesday. Take care.